Hollister Airfield, Nevada. 05:47 hours. They laughed before they saw her face. The kind of laughter that echoes inside hangars too early in the morning. Dry, careless, unchallenged. 3 mechanics leaned against a fuel rig, slurping gas station coffee and squinting against the desert wind. One gestured toward the maintenance bay with his chin. "Isn't she the one who crashed that cargo bird outside Fallujah?" "Yeah," another smirked. "Captain Emery Rowe. The one they pulled from the wreck like a rag doll?" The third chuckled, teeth bared. "I heard she panicked and dumped the payload mid-air, lost millions in assets." No one corrected him. No one mentioned the crossfire. No one spoke of the 10 soldiers who walked away because of her decision. Inside Bay 3, Captain Rowe bent over the flight manifest, her gloves dusty, the collar of her fatigues cinched tight against the cold. The air was sharp with metal and kerosene. She ignored the voices, as she always did. You learn to, when your name became shorthand for failure. Someone tossed a ratchet across the floor. It skidded, clattered to a stop beside her boots. She did not flinch. "Hey, Cap," a young tech called, grinning. "Need help lifting that file? Or you gonna freeze like last time?" The ripple of laughter returned. Louder this time, hungrier. Rowe reached for the ratchet, handed it back without a word. The tech's smile faltered. Just a moment, just enough to feel it. She turned away. Her silence was not cowardice, it was armor. Hardened over 2 years of rumor-fed isolation. A decorated pilot grounded by whispers, too volatile to fly, too competent to discharge. So they reassigned her. Logistics, paperwork, cargo routing. A slow burial beneath bureaucratic dust. She carried the weight in her spine, in her stride, in the way she never broke eye contact with the wind. Out on the tarmac, the bugle call echoed faintly from the command building. The sun had not yet breached the ridge, but already the heat pressed low and heavy. Rowe moved toward Hangar E, clipboard in hand. On her forearm, beneath the cuff, a flicker of ink caught the morning light. It was not a tattoo they recognized, not a squad symbol, not a deployment badge. It was sharper, angular, built like ciphered geometry. And someone saw it. Lieutenant Marcus Leland, freshly transferred from Air Mobility Command, was cataloging equipment when she passed. He paused mid-checklist, eyes narrowing. "Ma'am," he said, polite but hesitant. "That marking, what unit is that?" Rowe looked up, calm. Her eyes were dark with sleep deprivation, her voice level. "Nothing official," she replied. "Just a memory?" Leland nodded, but the image stayed with him. He had seen it. Not in any open database, but somewhere deep in a briefing he was not supposed to read. A file older than his commission. A mission with redacted names and one word stamped across the top. Sable Fall. The whisper of history. Back inside the bay, someone had uploaded a blurred photo to the squadron's group chat, captioned, "Pilot or Puzzle." "Who gave the ghost girl ink?" By lunch, the rumor cycle spun again. "She got that in Turkey, right? Black site operation?" "Nah, man." That was Syria. They say she went silent for 3 days after a mission and came back different. Captain Rowe ate alone. Again. Fork scraping against cold lasagna in the mess hall while conversations rippled around her like radio chatter, full of static, never addressed to her. Until a shadow crossed the table. Colonel Adisa Wynne. Logistics Command. Silver hair pulled tight beneath her cap, boots spotless even in the dust. She looked down, eyes unreadable. "Captain Rowe," she said, "you are assigned to Cargo Flight Echo 9 this Thursday. Special manifest." "High clearance, escort only." Rowe looked up. "Orders, ma'am?" Wynne did not blink. "They came through quiet channels. That symbol on your arm, It opened doors I do not pretend to understand. A pause. Make sure you are ready. The colonel left without elaboration. Ro remained still, tray untouched. Then slowly she rolled her sleeve back down. Her fingers shook, but not from cold. That night, in the barracks, she pulled out a battered envelope. No name, no return address. Inside, only a slip of faded paper. Survival does not equal redemption. But sometimes, it earns you a second look. She stared at the words until her vision blurred. Across base, Lieutenant Leland typed furiously, searching every secured database his clearance would permit. He found nothing. But something found him. A message pinged. Anonymous. Just a string of numbers. And a line. Ask her about Sablefall, but do it quietly. At 05:47 the next morning, Rose stepped onto the flight line. The wind tore at the flagpole. The sky was bruised with dawn, and a general, one no one expected, stepped from an unmarked jeep and stared straight at her. Hollister Airfield, Nevada. 05:53 hours. General Elijah Cade did not move like a politician. He moved like a man who had survived too many compromises to believe in appearances. Boots hit gravel with silent force. A long overcoat swept around his calves, dust catching at the seams. His aide whispered updates behind him, but the general waved them off without a word. His eyes were locked on the woman across the tarmac, the one who stood too still, too composed, for a logistics officer. Captain Emery Rowe met his gaze from 50 meters out. Then she looked away. Cade slowed. His presence rippled through the flight crew like static. Salutes snapped up. Conversations died mid-sentence, and still, Rowe did not move. She remained by the aircraft bay, clipboard in hand, reviewing the day's flight manifest as if this were just another Thursday, just another insult to survive. Cade reached her without preamble. His voice was low. Where did you get that mark? Rowe's hand stilled. Then she looked at him fully. 12 clicks outside Kalat. North sector, I was last out. Silence. Cade inhaled once, sharp, controlled. Then he stepped closer, studying the lines beneath her sleeve like they were old coordinates from a forgotten war. I read the ghost file, he said. Sablefall was a suicide op. 17 went in, 1 exfil. Rowe said nothing. You dragged an intelligence asset out of a collapsed compound, across enemy lines while bleeding out. I completed the objective, sir. Cade's jaw clenched. You were buried. Rowe nodded once. By design. A long pause. Cade turned to the aide trailing behind him. Pull Captain Rowe's jacket, not the redacted version. I want the burn logs. Level 9. The aide hesitated. Sir, that requires joint authorization. Then get it. He turned back to Rowe. They are going to ask questions soon. Be ready. Without another word, he left. The hangar swallowed her again. The tension did not. It lingered. By noon, the rumors had shifted tone. They no longer mocked. They speculated. The general asked for her file? That tattoo's not random, man. It's locked somewhere deep. What the hell did she do to earn his attention? Emery ignored it all. But her hands were less steady now. That afternoon, during cargo inspection, a young specialist named Ortega approached her. Nervous. Almost reverent. Ma'am, was it true? That thing in Kalat? Rowe did not look up. You should focus on the loadout manifest, specialist. He flushed, nodded, backed away. But the awe remained, and awe was dangerous. It led to curiosity. Curiosity led to exposure. That night, the barracks were quiet. Not respectful, just unsettled. Captain Rowe sat at her bunk, uniform folded at her side, cleaning her boots with the mechanical patience of someone clinging to routine. Across from her, a private streamed the morning's incident from the base feed. The video had been trimmed, looped, slowed. Frame by frame, it showed the moment General Cade paused beside her, the way his expression changed. They were calling it the recognition. Rowe closed the screen. Recognition was just another kind of danger. At 0200, she received a message. No name. No trace. Debrief scheduled, 0400 hours. Bay 16, bring no one. She memorized it, then deleted it. Bay 16 was not on any current Hollister map. It used to be a refit hangar. Now it was mostly dust and classified ghosts. Rowe arrived early, no guards, no clipboard. Just a keypad and silence. She entered the code she was not supposed to remember. Inside, the air was cooler. Older, as if it had not been disturbed in years. General Cade stood alone in the dark, arms folded behind him. On the table beside him, a single black folder marked OP Sablefall, Eyes Only. He gestured to the chair. Sit. Rowe sat. He opened the file. Pages flipped under his fingers. Maps, surveillance stills, a field report with her name scrawled across a redacted paragraph. You carried him 5 miles through active fire. How? She answered flatly. I did not want to leave him. You should not have survived. I almost didn't. Cade closed the file. Hard. Then why bury you? Rowe's jaw flexed. Because I made a call, she said. I deviated from protocol. I delayed exfil by 13 minutes to retrieve civilian files he insisted on carrying. I was not supposed to risk the route. You did. And they lived. But the cost was visibility. Cameras. Witnesses. The op leaked. And they punished you for that. Rowe met his eyes. No. They buried me to protect the program. A long silence stretched. Then Cade slid a slip of paper toward her. It was crisp. Freshly printed. Joint Command is reopening covert case files. They want deniability. But they also want deniable assets. You were flagged. They want you back. Rowe looked at the paper. She did not touch it. What does it cost this time? Everything again, he said, but on your terms. She stood. My terms, she said slowly, begin with a name cleared. That can be arranged. She gave a small, tired nod, then left. Back outside, the wind had risen. It howled across the base like a warning. She walked straight into it. Somewhere above her, a plane took off under moonlight. And deep in the dark, inside a file marked with ink no one recognized, the first line had already changed. Captain Emery Rowe, reactivated. Hollister Airfield, Nevada. 0611 hours. By the time the rest of the base woke up, the air had already shifted. Not in temperature, Nevada mornings were always knife cold, but in tone. Something had cracked overnight, something long assumed to be permanent. Captain Emery Rowe's name was on people's lips again, but this time, not as a joke. Inside the squadron office, Lieutenant Marcus Leland sat rigid at his desk, eyes fixed on a monitor filled with clearance requests he had no business accessing. Each time he typed a query into the database, another redacted wall greeted him. Dead ends, sealed compartments. Until one fragment slipped through. Sablefall. Confirmed. AO, Northern Helmand. Status, retired asset. Final flag, Tier 9 clearance. Underneath it, row E. He leaned back slowly, heart thudding in his ears. So it was true. All of it. He stood, nearly knocking over his chair, and strode toward the operations wing. Out on the tarmac, Roe was walking beside the Thursday loadout, the one Colonel Wynne had quietly warned her about. She traced her fingers across the cold metal skin of the C-160 transport plane, her eyes scanning cargo manifests. Ammunition crates. Sealed flight boxes. One container was labeled Echo Gamma 2. That was not standard inventory. Two airmen lingered by the liftgate, murmuring. One of them glanced at her, then looked away too quickly. Roe did not confront them. She did not need to. Suspicion had a scent, and this load reeked of it. "Captain!" a voice called. She turned. Lieutenant Leland jogged toward her, out of breath, file folder clutched tight in his hand. "I know now," he blurted. "About Sablefall." About what they buried. Her eyes narrowed. "You should not have looked." "I had to," he said. "I saw what they did to you." The rumors, the silence. That was never about failure, was it? "No," she replied. But it made a convenient story. He handed her the folder. This was in an older cache. Someone forgot to seal the audit trail. "Your mission logs, snippets of them, enough to prove things." Roe opened it briefly. Her own handwriting stared back at her from the margins of a decrypted tactical report. She closed it again. "What do you want, Lieutenant?" Leland hesitated. "To help you get your name back." Roe shook her head. "That ship's already sinking, but thank you." Then softly, "Do not make this your crusade. It will chew you up." He did not answer. In the base admin center, Colonel Wynne was already on a call when General Cade entered. Her voice dropped the moment she saw him. "Sir, I assume you've reviewed the reactivation memo?" "I drafted it." Wynne's brow creased. "And you still intend to send her into Echo 9? She is the only one who understands what that cargo means." "It is not a cargo flight anymore," Wynne said, jaw tight. "It is a message." "I know." Cade placed a small chip on her desk. A data slug, covert footage from the Sablefall extraction. Wynne plugged it into her terminal. Grainy footage played. Explosions, smoke, Roe dragging a bloodied man through alleyways, shielding him with her own body as they stumbled toward a faint beacon in the sky. "I watched this a decade ago," Wynne whispered, "and we still let them say she panicked." "She did panic," Cade said. "That is what makes her human. What matters is what she did after." The colonel looked up. "And now?" "Now she delivers the truth." That evening, the base buzzed with a scheduled readiness drill. Soldiers scrambled through corridors. Flight lines were lit under floodlights. Commanders barked orders into radios. Roe stood in the shadows beside the refueling station, studying the personnel manifest for Thursday's flight. Her name was listed last, not as pilot, not even as cargo chief. Just passenger, classified authority. She closed the clipboard. A voice startled her. "You are not the only ghost on this flight." She turned. A man stepped out of the darkness, older. Weathered, wore no insignia. "You're from Tier 9?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Let's say I never stopped flying missions that don't exist." He handed her a flash drive. Everything the brass pretended not to know. The Sablefall file, unredacted, along with logs of Echo Gamma 2. Roe took it with trembling fingers. "They're moving more than munitions, aren't they?" she asked. He nodded. "What you carried out from Kalat. They never debriefed you properly, did they?" Her pulse thudded. "No," she whispered. "Then you're not ready for what's coming," he said. "But you are the only one who can carry it." He turned and disappeared into the dark. Roe stood alone for several long seconds. Then slowly, she opened her sleeve and looked at the ink that had damned her for 2 years. It pulsed under the security lights like it was alive. By dawn, she would be airborne again. Not as a scapegoat, not as a relic, but as a reckoning. Hollister Airfield, Nevada, 0504 hours, flight. Echo 9, wheels up. The engines screamed awake like caged animals. Inside the dimly lit cargo bay, steel groaned beneath shifting weight. Cold air clung to every surface. Hydraulic arms locked down crates labeled Echo Gamma 2, their barcodes blinking with encrypted codes, none of them standard issue. Captain Emery Rowe stood near the rear ramp, strapped into her harness, eyes tracking the load like a mother watches her wounded child. She had not been assigned a weapon. She had not asked for one. The manifest said the flight was bound for Keflavik Forward Relay, a listening post buried in snow and secrets. But Emery had read enough between the lines. Keflavik was never the destination. It was a holding pattern, a misdirection. Opposite her sat 6 other passengers. No names, no insignia. All quiet, all observing her more than the flight. Tier 9, no doubt. One of them, a woman in charcoal fatigues, her boots polished to surgical gleam, spoke. "You know what you're carrying?" Emery didn't look at her. "I know enough." The woman tilted her head. "Then you know it's not weapons." Emery's gaze shifted. "It is memory. That's always the heavier cargo." A moment passed. The hum of flight deepened, altitude gained, and then silence. Until the woman spoke again. "You were never supposed to survive Kalat." Rowe's reply was immediate. "I was not supposed to be remembered." That shut the conversation down. 4 hours into the flight, the crew rotated. Tension did not. Emery moved along the crates, brushing her fingers against the cold alloy casings. Her sleeve rose slightly, just enough for the ink to catch light. The man closest to the control panel saw it. "Captain," he said, "permission to speak freely?" Rowe turned. "Go." "I was there." "On comms, Operation Sablefall, I heard the call sign go dark." Emery said nothing. "I thought we lost everyone," he continued. "I remember the silence. It felt like a funeral that never got held." Now she looked at him. "You don't bury silence, you live with it." He nodded, subdued. In the cockpit, the co-pilot flipped switches with mechanical precision. Outside, storm clouds brewed along the Atlantic corridor. Radar painted a wall of interference. Lieutenant Garces, new, sharp, but tense, pointed at the screen. "Birds incoming, no transponder codes." The pilot squinted. "Unmanned? Looks like drones." "Fast." "How fast?" "Fast enough." The comms crackled, then died, just like that. In the cargo bay, the emergency lights flickered. Emery felt it before she heard it, the shift in pressure. A slight tremor. Then the unmistakable thud of something hitting the undercarriage. Drones, not surveillance. Offensive. A jolt. Alarms. Oxygen masks dropped. The intercom buzzed. One voice. "Brace for evasive." The plane banked hard left. Crates groaned. One of the Tier 9 operatives reached to secure the load. Then it happened. A side panel near crate EG2 blew open. Wind howled in, fierce and punishing. Pressure dropped. Cold slammed through the bay like a fist. 2 crates snapped from their moorings. Emery lunged. Her boots scraped steel as she dove toward the closest crate, slamming her shoulder into the locking rail. Her harness yanked tight across her ribs. Pain bloomed across her back. But the crate held, barely. Others were not so lucky. One Tier 9 agent tumbled sideways, caught by a loose strap at the last second. Another lost his tablet, gone into sky and nothingness. Chaos reigned for 45 seconds. Then the pressure equalized. The side panel auto-sealed. The backup systems kicked in. Silence returned, heavy, shaken. Not complete. Emery crawled back to her feet. Someone vomited in the corner. One of the operatives, bleeding from the temple, looked at her through a film of sweat and disbelief. "You held the crate," he whispered. "You saved the manifest." She stared back, voice raw. "No, I saved what was inside." 2 hours later. The aircraft limped across the Greenlandic airspace. The primary nav system was still down. Inside the bay, makeshift bandages, stiff silence, and a collective understanding lingered like smoke. What they had just endured was not random. It was targeted. Emery sat against the wall near crate EG2, arms wrapped around her knees. The tattoo on her forearm was exposed now. No one asked what it meant. The woman in charcoal fatigues sat beside her. "There's a kill order on this crate," she murmured. Rowe didn't respond. "The agency wants the past erased. You're the last piece of it." Now Rowe looked at her. "Then I suppose they'll try again." A pause. "Not if we land," the woman said. And then, "We're not going to Keflavik, are we?" Rowe nodded slowly. "We are going where the past cannot hide anymore." Final beat, 0602 hours, somewhere over Sierra Mesa. The drone that hit them did not fail. It reported back, and someone, somewhere, just realized that Emery Rowe is still alive. And still carrying the one thing more dangerous than secrets. Proof. Sierra Mesa Emergency Airstrip. 0644 hours. The landing was not graceful. It was bone-rattling, gear-screaming, metal-scorching necessity. The aircraft slammed onto the emergency strip at Sierra Mesa, a decommissioned refueling station nestled between ridgelines that did not appear on any civilian map. Dust curled into the morning light like smoke from old sins. The wheels locked, the tail fishtailed. Inside the cargo bay, everything shuddered. No one spoke. Captain Emery Rowe remained strapped in, jaw clenched tight against the chaos. Her hands were bruised. Her boots stained with hydraulic fluid. Her eyes locked on crate Echo Gamma 2 like it held her future inside. Because it did. Outside, the heat was rising fast. Desert sun against cold metal made the air shimmer. There were no welcome crews. No tarmac marshals, just silence and mountains. A skeleton ground crew arrived minutes later. 2 trucks, 4 men, no insignia. No greetings, no questions. They moved like private contractors. They handled the crate like it was unexploded ordnance. Emery stepped onto the ground. Her boots struck the tarmac with deliberate weight. One of the men approached. Aviators. Plain fatigues. "Captain Rowe," he asked. "Yes. Colonel Jessam is expecting you. Debriefing tent North Sector." Rowe stared at him. "There's no North Sector. Not on this strip." He smirked. "Not on your maps." He gestured. "This way, ma'am." The tent was not military. It was intelligence. Canvas reinforced with composite thread. 2 guards posted outside, their weapons unmarked but expensive. Inside, the air was cooler, smelled faintly of ozone and coffee. Colonel Jessam waited behind a folding desk, sleeves rolled up, arms crossed over a leather folder marked Classified, Covert Ops, Deep Dissolve. He did not rise. "Captain Rowe," he said, voice low and surgical. "I have been waiting a long time to meet the last survivor of Sablefall." She remained standing. "And I have waited a long time for someone to stop pretending it never happened." Jessam gestured to the seat. "Your truth comes with risk. If even a fraction of what you brought back from Kalat sees daylight, diplomatic fallout becomes seismic." Rowe said nothing. Jessam opened the folder. Pages flipped. Surveillance photos. Handwritten notes. One sheet labeled, Sable Fall Contingency. Row, uncontained variable. He tapped it. You were not supposed to re-enter operational space. Then perhaps you should have buried me deeper, she replied. He smiled. That edge is why you survived. Then he leaned forward. But now, you are in my airspace, and I need you to make a choice. She stared at him. You want the crate destroyed. He nodded. There are protocols for things like this, forgotten histories, ghost operations. We clean up what time forgets. Rowe leaned in. What if I do not want it forgotten? Jessum's smile disappeared. Then we enter another kind of war. Meanwhile, back at the aircraft, the Tier 9 operatives gathered around a makeshift perimeter. They were trained to wait, but not blindly. The woman in charcoal fatigues checked her encrypted tablet. No confirmation on handover, she muttered. Another operative spoke. You trust her? I trust she knows what is at stake. They stood silent for a moment longer. Then one of them whispered, What if Jessum flips her? No one answered. Because that was the fear. Inside the tent, the conversation was shifting. Jessum's voice softened. You do not owe this country anything anymore. Not after what they did to you. They made you a cautionary tale. Let me unmake that. Rowe narrowed her eyes. And what do you want in return? He leaned back. Everything. The crate, the files, your silence? Rowe stood. No. Jessum blinked. Think carefully. I have, she said. And then, quietly, if I stay silent again, then the men who died in that alley stay dead for nothing. She turned. Walked out. Jessum watched her go, then picked up a secure handset. Activate Echo Reset Protocol. We may have a breach. As Rose stepped into the sunlight, her comms chirped once. Encrypted channel. Unknown ID. Captain Rowe, you have one shadow behind you. Repeat, one tail from the tent, unmarked. She did not respond, just kept walking. Her pace, calm. Her spine straight. Her left hand slid toward the emergency beacon clipped under her belt. 10 meters behind, a man in aviators adjusted his grip. Rowe turned into the shadow of the hangar. Then she vanished. Inside the aircraft, the crate began to hum. A low vibration, barely audible. The operatives heard it first. What the hell? Suddenly, the barcode on crate Echo Gamma 2 flickered, then blinked out. Someone whispered, That is not cargo. That is a trigger. Final beat, 0703 hours, Sierra Mesa airstrip. Captain Emery Rowe was no longer just transporting truth. She had just become the fuse. Sierra Mesa airstrip, 0711 hours. Perimeter alert, Echo Black. The alarm was not loud, just a single tone, steady, low frequency, meant for ears trained to fear it. Inside the cargo bay, Tier 9 agents snapped into motion. Outside, the desert seemed to freeze. Captain Emery Rowe was already moving. She ducked behind the hangar, boots silent against cracked concrete, breath sharp in her lungs. One glance over her shoulder confirmed the tale. Male, tall, plain fatigues, no insignia, just like the others. But his pace was wrong. He was not tracking her. He was positioning. Rowe's instincts flared. She cut right, through a side passage cluttered with old fueling drums, then circled back around the secondary hangar, out of his line of sight. Her comms crackled. Rowe, Carter here. You need to see this now. Lieutenant Marcus Leland's voice, strained, urgent. She answered quietly, Go. The crate isn't hardware, not anymore. It's live data, not digital, analog. Film, tapes, logs. Mission reports. Some of them predate even Tier 9. She stopped cold. How much? Enough to burn half a decade of covert ops clean through. Another pause. And you're not the only one they used. Ro, your mission, Kalat, there were 3 others. Same time window, same setup. You weren't abandoned. You were quarantined. Her throat tightened. Confirm that. Confirmed. They scrubbed all 4 operations to protect something bigger. Sablefall wasn't just about extraction. It was about extraction without exposure. She closed her eyes. Everything began to align. The classified tattoo, the silence, the isolation, the reason her rescue had been accidental. She was not collateral. She was containment. Back at the aircraft, the agent secured the perimeter as instructed. But the crate was no longer inert. It pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. Inside, a pressure sensor activated. One operative peered at the readout. This thing's syncing with something off-site. Another checked the manifest. It's not Echo Gamma 2. That's just the case code. Inside, it's labeled Archive 11R. They looked at each other. Ro was never transporting evidence. She was transporting leverage. Emery reached the command van parked behind a decoy tent. Inside, Leland, hunched over a terminal, eyes wide. Show me, she said. He turned the monitor. Grainy black and white images appeared. Footage from other missions, similar formations, different geographies. Same silence. Names scrolled underneath, all redacted. Except one. Ro, E, Kalat, survived, no debrief. Next to it, Mendez, A. Deceased Chin, R. Deceased Co, H. Deceased Yazari, F. Unknown. She stared at the final name. Yazari? She whispered. He was declared KIA. Leland nodded slowly. Until this morning. There was a ping, Tehran. Someone accessed a server that hadn't been touched in 10 years. The username was his. She leaned in. If Yazari's alive, then he has a piece of Archive 11R too. Her eyes flicked to the window. They're not trying to silence me, Leland. They're trying to stop a convergence. Inside the debrief tent, Colonel Jessom was done waiting. He stood before a portable field panel showing biometric signatures from the aircraft and perimeter. Then one blip vanished, the tail on Ro. Jessom's face tightened. He reached for his encrypted phone. Activate glass protocol. The voice on the other end responded. Confirming asset breach? Yes. Primary? No. Cargo. Understood. Outside, Ro broke into a run. She keyed the emergency beacon clipped beneath her belt, sending a pulse on a scrambled frequency only a few channels could catch. To anyone listening, Archive 11R is compromised. Leverage protocol in effect. Requesting immediate secure corridor extraction. Seconds later, a reply buzzed into her earpiece. Identity confirmed. Secure corridor routing in progress. Intercept team ETA 18 minutes, hold position if safe. She exhaled, then turned to Leland. You're with me now. No more terminals. You move when I move. He grabbed the hard drive and followed. Back at the aircraft, the agents made a decision. We can't let the crate be moved without knowing what Jessom plans. The woman in charcoal fatigues gave a final nod, then unlocked the secondary latch. Inside the crate, sealed reels, photographs, tape-recorded field audio, and at the very bottom, a data reel labeled in handwriting. Yazari, live confession. Kalat, red line. She paled. It's not just proof of what happened. It's proof they let it happen. Final beat. 07:27 hours. Sierra Mesa, North Ridge. Captain Emery Rowe stared into the sunlight, wind cutting across her face. In the distance, a dot on the horizon, an inbound chopper. Fast. No markings. Behind her, the past was no longer silent. It was loaded. Labeled and ready to explode. Sierra Mesa North Ridge, 0738 hours, extraction window T-5. The helicopter emerged from the clouds like a blade through gauze. Dark, low-flying, no national markings, only the silence of authorization too high to question. Captain Emery Rowe stood on the ridge, the wind snapping against her collar. Her hand gripped the reinforced case now known to contain Archive 11R. Behind her, Lieutenant Leland scanned the tree line with a sidearm he had never expected to use. The Tier 9 operatives were en route. The crate was split. The truth had already begun to leak, and Colonel Jessam was no longer hiding. Inside the base compound, Jessam tore through encrypted feeds. Rowe had moved faster than they expected. Worse, she had traction. The leak was active. Secure channels showed a spike in server pings across Brussels, Langley, and Ramstein. Keywords: Sable Fall, Archive 11R, Yazari. It was spreading. Not proof yet, but attention. He slammed his fist on the table. "Launch the blackout," he ordered. EMP sweep, target the ridge, fry every signal she has. The technician hesitated. "That'll hit our own uplinks. Then burn it all. If this gets out, you won't have a command left to serve." The order was confirmed. On the ridge, Rowe's comms died mid-signal. The earpiece crackled, buzzed, then went silent. No heartbeat tone, no extraction window update. Just the wind. She looked at Leland. "EMP." He nodded grimly. "They're cutting the line." In the distance, dust trails began to rise, 4 unmarked SUVs crawling up the far slope. "Not ours," Leland said. Rowe tightened her grip on the case. "Then we buy 5 minutes." She turned and opened the storage compartment on her belt, pulled out a flare gun, the old kind. Analog. Immune to disruption. She raised it toward the sky. One red comet arced high above the ridge, a signal no machine could erase. Below, in the airstrip command unit, the Tier 9 operatives saw it. The woman in charcoal fatigues stood instantly. "She's exposed." The others loaded weapons. "You still trust her?" one asked. She checked her sidearm. "I trust anyone carrying the kind of truth that gets satellites pointed at their head." They moved. Back on the ridge, the first SUV crested the slope. Doors flung open. Men in black stepped out, faces masked, weapons up. Not standard military, not mercenaries either. Something worse. Off-ledger teams. Rowe stayed kneeling beside the crate, body low, heartbeat even. Then she spoke, calmly. "Lieutenant?" "Yeah?" "If I go down, you get the case to the fallback point." 24.7 north, 89.3 west. Leland gritted his teeth. "Not happening. Not your call." The first bullet hit 10 feet wide. Warning shot. The masked men advanced slowly, formation tight. Then one shouted through a voice amplifier, "Captain Rowe, stand down!" "You are unauthorized to move classified material. Final warning," she shouted back. "You buried a war crime in this box. You will not bury me with it." Silence. Then gunfire. Rowe rolled left, dragging the case behind the ridgeline as rounds cut through air. Leland returned fire, badly, but enough to keep heads down. A shadow dropped behind them. Rotor Wash screamed. The unmarked helicopter had arrived, but so had the Tier 9 strike team. A firefight erupted. Dust flew, stone chipped. Echoes of suppressed rifles cracked through the morning. Rowe crawled toward the helicopter, flanked by the woman in charcoal. You said 5 minutes, the woman growled. Rowe shoved the case into her arms. Make it count. Then stood to cover them, shoulder-braced, sidearm ready. One of the masked men advanced. Close. Too close. Rowe pulled the trigger, once. He dropped. The crate made it inside. Leland staggered after it, bleeding from the shoulder. Rowe remained at the door. Jessam's team was closing in. And then... a voice through the chopper's onboard loudspeaker. Captain Rowe! This is your final chance. Step inside or disappear. She turned. Looked at the horizon. Looked at the team inside, waiting. Then back at the men who had spent years erasing her. And she stepped forward, but not into the helicopter, into the camera. Mounted beside the crate, running on analog film. She faced it directly. Her voice level. My name is Captain Emery Rowe. I was the extraction officer on Operation Sablefall. What I witnessed was not a failed mission. It was a sanctioned purge. The people responsible for burying it are trying to do the same to me. She paused. I will not let them. Then turned, grabbed the recording unit and threw it into the chopper. The woman caught it. The chopper lifted, blades howling. Rowe turned back to the ridge. Gunfire sparked behind her. She ran, into the rocks, into the unknown. Final beat, 0801 hours, classified airspace northbound vector. Inside the helicopter, the footage played, grainy, real. Undeniable. The woman in charcoal nodded once. It's done. And far below, in the silence of the desert, Captain Emery Rowe had vanished. Again. 2 weeks later. Undisclosed location, Senate Subcommittee briefing room. The room was quiet, not solemn, strategic. Austere walls, no cameras, no press. Just 7 members of the U.S. Senate, 3 defense officials, and 1 hard drive sitting in the middle of a reinforced table. Across from them sat General Elijah Cade. The footage had finished playing minutes ago. No one had spoken since. Then, at last, "Is this authentic?" asked Senator Raskin. Cade nodded. "It is raw, time-stamped analog, no metadata." Which is why it survived the EMP sweep. "And the woman?" another pressed. "She is real," Cade replied. "Captain Emery Rowe, formerly of Tactical Air Mobility Group 7, presumed inactive, now missing in action." Again. Silence fell again. Then a whisper from the civilian legal advisor. "She exposed more than a mission. This is doctrine-level rot." These files trace back nearly a decade. Cade didn't blink. "I know." 3 days later. Hollister Airfield, Ethics Review Board. The Tier 9 operatives who had aided Rowe were cleared of insubordination. Officially. Unofficially, they were reassigned to internal review roles, granted access to redacted archives, and quietly offered positions within the Silent Integrity Office, a newly formed unit tasked with investigating covert errors previously thought untouchable. Lieutenant Marcus Leland was promoted, not for heroics. For asking questions no one wanted asked. When handed his new badge, he asked only one thing. "Has anyone found her?" The answer, "Not yet." Elsewhere. Classified satellite uplink. Remote Icelandic outpost. Inside a plain gray room, a woman in charcoal fatigues uploaded the raw analog footage to 6 independent news outlets across 3 continents. Then she burned the film. In another compartment, the Yazari confession file was decoded, transcribed, and couriered through diplomatic pouches. 1 copy to the UN, 1 to The Hague. 1 to a locked file marked simply, Rowe X, release if compromised. Meanwhile, Somewhere in Patagonia, high-altitude plateau, a figure walked a goat path alone, face obscured by scarf, shoulders squared beneath local textiles, boots worn from distance. Captain Emery Rowe did not travel with a name anymore. She carried no rank, no weapon, only a weatherproof satchel with 2 items inside. A notebook of coordinates and code names she was never meant to retain. And a folded patch, her old unit insignia, stitched with an angular phoenix no longer secret. In a nearby village, she taught radio repair to former combatants. At night, she monitored encrypted chatter on a repurposed rig, listening not for her name but for others like her. The forgotten, the buried, the silenced. 1 month later. Global media uprising. The footage reached the public. It exploded. Not because of what it showed, covert programs, purged assets, systemic betrayal, but because of how it was said. Calmly, truthfully. By a woman who had nothing left to protect but the meaning of what she'd endured. Rowe's face became an image, not triumphant, not glamorous, just steady. She did not run for office. She did not give interviews. She vanished again, but the consequences did not. A congressional oversight committee was convened. A new internal doctrine was signed into law. The Witness Protection Clause for Covert Integrity. Service members previously erased by classification were eligible for reinstatement, posthumous recognition, and medical reparations. Over 400 names were unsealed. Among them, Mendez, Chin, Ko, Yazari, and Rowe. A patch was designed in her honor, black thread over gray, shaped like a phoenix rising from broken flight lines. Not military issue, but worn by those who had survived secrets. Final beat, 1 year later. Northern Range Shelter Facility. A younger soldier, face raw with fresh silence, stepped into the reception office. The woman behind the desk didn't smile. Didn't need to. She simply said, "First time?" The soldier nodded. "I heard about a place," she whispered, "where they don't ask you what you did. Just who you are now." The woman nodded, and from the next room a voice replied, "Then you're exactly where you belong." In the corner of the building, beneath faded light, a patch was pinned to the wall. Phoenix. Geometric, and beneath it, a simple inscription. Some truths are carried, not shouted. But they echo just the same.